The masculine wound. The energies of light and warmth is something every little plant needs from their sun to grow into a beautiful, strong, abundant tree. Without a sufficient amount of light, the little plant becomes stunted and spends their days believing they are unworthy of the love, light, and warmth that is so naturally and freely given to so many others around them. I have never felt safe expressing my vulnerable, soft, warm, kind-hearted, nurturing, emotional self. And I have mistaken this wound as being part of my feminine energy. But it was my masculine energy that was stunted. Like most of the men in my life, and like most masculine dominant people, I viewed my worth as my ability to provide others with my loving acts of service. For the first time in 23 years, I haven't had a paying job. And because of this, I have tried to compensate my worth by doing more acts of service around the house and for those I love. Healing takes so much energy, leaving to feeling overwhelmed and exhausted. On top of those feelings was the added stress and pressure of needing to quickly heal so I can get a job, make some money, and feel worthy of my family again. At the same time, also fiercely trying to convince myself that my worth is not based on the money I make. What a mindfuck. If you follow my channel, then you know I wrote a piece on my mother. A deep-rooted wound that was very difficult for me to heal. I assumed most of my adult problems came from the feminine relationships in my life. For years, I thought my focus needed to predominantly be on healing my feminine energy. Recently, I've been seeing multiple signs to focus on healing my masculine energy. I thought about it and asked myself, hadn't I already healed the father wound within me? I let that question simmer for a few days. One morning, as I spent time outside watering my plants, I thought about my father. Over the years, I've worked on releasing him from any resentment, lack, anger that I had towards him. I didn't think there was much to forgive. I spent so long focusing on my mother wound that it wasn't until now that I realized I gave him about as much attention as he gave me. As I sat in silence, I said to myself, I know he wasn't capable of meeting my needs, and although my child self is deeply wounded by this, my 38-year-old self understands that some people were never shown love, and therefore don't know how to love. And as I tried to convince myself of this, I wondered how difficult it is for a man to set aside his pride and tell his daughter that she is beautiful, or at the very least accepted. I recalled my wedding day and how it was assumed that he would walk me down the aisle only because of tradition, not because he wanted to or was proud to. And because of tradition, it didn't cross my mind to do anything differently. I then recalled looking at a picture from our father-daughter dance and feeling ashamed of how huge I was in comparison to him. He is a very small-framed and skinny man, and I looked like I could swallow him up. I blamed everything wrong in my life on my weight, and believed I had an overbearing personality that was just too much for people to love. I am so completely different from everyone in the family. I assumed it was impossible to love me. Never once did I blame him. At the time of my wedding nearly 14 years ago, for our father-daughter dance, I almost selected a cover song by Paramore called My Hero, which says a lot about how I viewed him at the time. How hurtful it must have been for my mother to observe how he could do no wrong in the eyes of his children, and at the same time view her as the ultimate villain of our stories. His children view him as their hero because he was rarely around. He would swoop in, do something cool, and then leave again. Even if he was physically there, he was not present with us. He always found a way to escape being a man of authority, and he pushed it all off onto our mother. If we asked him for or about anything a responsible parent would have to answer, he would say, "Go ask your mother." That was a buzzkill because her answer was always no. Sometimes, if we played our cards right, we could get him to decide, and it would most likely result in a yes. He would escape his children using manly excuses like yard work, auto mechanics, tending to the animals, hunting, fishing, camping. And as a young adult raised in a Hispanic culture, I viewed these as positive traits just like everyone else did. What's wrong with being a hardworking man, a provider, a heavy lifter, with rough masculine hands? I wanted these traits in a man because they were all I knew and admired of a man. Society sees no wrong in these characteristics simply because it has been done this way for so long. The man is expected to do all these hard, manly things, while the woman is expected to do all the homemaking and meet the entire family's emotional needs. The father is not required to show warmth, love, and affection because those are considered signs of weakness. And so he assumes the mother will fill those needs. But the mother has these needs too. Who is there to show her some warmth, love, and affection? The man assumes his 2 minutes of getting off at night provides her with all the intimacy she needs to fill her cup for the days ahead. The imbalances are so loud, yet most people ignore them still. When I met my now husband, I thought about my mother's life and asked myself if I wanted the same life, and the answer was no. My analytical mind needed to discover why I didn't want to marry a man like my father or brother. Remember, at this time I viewed my father as my hero, so it was a big question to have to ask myself. From my childhood perspective, there were many positives to her life, but from my adult perspective, the negatives outweighed the positives by far. And I realized I wouldn't want to raise my children in the same confusing ways that I was raised. I was a girl with no one to teach me how to be a girl, or even really allowed me to. I was stuck in a boys' world where they all refused me. I didn't have that one-on-one time with my father because there were 3 of us girls, and he didn't have time for all of us. So he instead put that time into his only son, leaving his daughters in the hands of their mother, ignoring the fact that their mother had nothing to give. My sisters were so much younger than me, born in a different era. My parents confused me. I didn't know if I was supposed to act more like a girl or a boy. I was told I wasn't allowed to cut my beautiful girlish long hair, and that I should act more like a girl. But at the same time, I was forced to play outside with my brother, male cousins, and his friends. My parents wanted us all to be active, so I was put into sports like baseball, basketball, soccer, and I was good at them, but I hated being competitive. By the time I was 11, I hated my body and my gender. I wasn't allowed to wear makeup or to shave my legs like all the other girls because I wasn't old enough yet. I was well developed by age 11, and I was teased in school for wearing sports bras that matched my t-shirts by all the popular girls who had no boobs. I was tough, so I could scare them all away when I needed to, but what I really, really wanted to do was be my natural sensitive self and cry. As I recalled my childhood confusion, it was clear I did not want a life like my mother's, and I did not want to raise children as my parents raised me. I was grateful that the man I fell in love with had few attributes of any masculine in my life, and the idea of sharing my life with him excited me. I felt proud to have found a man who is just as strong, manly, and capable as any of them, but has no desire to abuse his masculinity. Unlike with the men in my life, I felt small in his arms. I felt safe, warm, protected, loved, and appreciated. My husband isn't ashamed of showing his affection. He strives every day to fill my cup as much as I strive to fill his. He puts effort into my happiness. He didn't have a father around the home like I did. He had to learn every manly thing he knows through his own observations of TV dads and the men that came in and out of his life. He watches This Old House, reads instruction manuals, and works on his cars as a hobby. His ability to comprehend and follow instructions has made him the most amazing handyman I've ever met. I truly believe he could fix and build anything. When we had our boys, he showed his love for them and didn't care who saw it. He is nurturing and attentive, so much that family members made comments about how our boys were going to grow up to be men if he didn't take them hunting, fishing, camping, and shooting. They said things like, well, at least they have my father and brother to show them how. They unconsciously placed this shame onto my husband's lap. And my mama bear animal instincts forced me to protect my family from the guilt and shame that they so freely gave out. I distanced us from them, not wanting to go to family gatherings where we would be teased and alienated because we had different beliefs. I didn't want anything to do with these manly men, and I did my best to make that known to my husband and my boys. But my husband didn't let it bother him. He hates division when it can so easily be avoided by simply accepting each other. He said as a young boy he always wanted to go camping and fishing, and wished he had a father who wanted to take him. So he planned out trips for us to take, not from spite, but from love. A stark contrast from what I was taught as a child. While watering my plants, I recalled a painful memory with my father nearly 5 years ago. Greeting and hugging my father has always been an awkward experience, but there was a particular day when he made it very clear to me that this act of affection was not wanted. I still can't distinguish between the physical interaction and the energetic one. All I know is his reaction made my heart sink into my stomach, and I couldn't think about anything else besides that interaction. And we haven't hugged since. We now greet each other with this incredibly awkward fist bump. My husband laughs and tells me to greet him with an exaggerated hug the next time that I see him, just to release the tension between us. But even though I can see the humor from his perspective, I can't seem to let go of the energy I felt from him that day. I've thought about talking to him about this, but for me, his reaction was the culmination of our entire relationship, and I want him to know that I will never put myself in a position to be rejected by him again. This situation made me aware of how much healing I had left to do. I've always used my anger as a weapon and as a shield to protect my heart and inner child from being vulnerable to that level of pain. I can't feel sad if I use anger to protect me. 2 years ago, a tragic accident took my brother-in-law's life. My sister married a man very much like our father. He admired our father and had many of the same interests. Our father saw him as a second son. After he died, it took a piece from our father, and my sister was broken. There was nothing any of us could do to put her back together. And suddenly, this nurturing, warm aspect of our father emerged. We all witnessed this part of him that none of us had ever seen or known existed. He was so completely present and available for my sister. So supportive and loving. He hugged her tightly every time he greeted her. He sat with her for months, slept on her couch, brought her food, and still tends to her home and animals. We all watched from afar, and although we were grateful she had someone to lean on, the energy of jealousy was stirring in the air. What a horrible and shameful feeling to have at a time like this, I thought. We all did, but I'll be the only one to admit it. No one talked about it because it's a shameful emotion to feel. Most Hispanic cultures already don't like talking about their feelings, and as far as they're concerned, shameful ones don't exist at all. Unless, of course, you're gossiping about others. So we all turned a blind eye and pretended the emotion wasn't there. It was like having a giant elephant in the room with us every time we were around each other. Again, my analytical brain was very curious about it all. I asked myself why I felt jealous. My answer was obvious, but I thought, certain circumstances would surely alter the name of this emotion, wouldn't they? Shouldn't we call it something else at this point? Maybe yearning would fit better? Is it so shameful of me to feel a deep yearning and sadness from watching my father pour his love and affection that I craved all my life into my sister? Forcing me to become acutely aware that he's been capable of expressing these warm emotions, but it required a life-altering tragedy to bring them out into the light? Then I thought, maybe he didn't even know he was capable of them. All of which does not satisfy the thirst for his love and affection that the rest of us still crave. I realized that if this is what it takes to receive this amount of attention from him, I'd rather not. And so from this tragedy, I learned to find ways to accept the relationship I have with my father for what it is and what it never will be. I have something far more valuable. My husband and my boys have filled my cup with all the warmth and love I could ever ask for. And after I shifted my perspective onto the mountain of love that I have externally, I learned that I was always worthy of receiving the warmth and light of the sun. I mistakenly assumed that the light came from outside of me, from the love others gave to me. But it was within me all along. I overflowed my own cup when I again shifted my perspective to the warmth and light inside of me. I learned that there is a sun that lives within all of us. This is the fire we feed when we accept and love ourselves for exactly who we are. When I allow myself to express my vulnerable, soft, very connected self freely, my sun burns brightly and is powerful enough to warm even the coldest of hearts. Because I am me, and I am now proud of the soul that is me, I possess the ability to choose to change my perspective into a more positive one. Not in a toxic positivity, shove my true feelings back down my throat or hide them under the rug kind of way. A true change of perspective and perception. I chose to use this experience as a training exercise to help me grow by re-experiencing the feelings of my child self and accepting them for what they are, sadness. Those energies of shame and guilt burn away in the fires of my anger. Here, I must choose to release them, to resist my unconscious urge to focus on the negative current that persistently attempts to carry me away with it, and instead, encourage myself to focus my attention on the positive things my Father gives me. His love language would be called acts of service. When I was younger, he made sure I was always up for school before he left for work. I could still hear his obnoxious banging on my window or flickering of my lights to get me up, irritating me. But the smell of his morning coffee would warm my heart. He took excellent care of my vehicles and taught me how to change the oil and how to change the tires so I would never have to rely on anyone. I recall many moments when he created a fun experience from very little, like riding in his work tractors or getting to drive his truck down the ditch banks. He taught me how to be responsible, how to maintenance the things I care about. He worked a hard, tiresome job and provided for 4 kids and his wife. As an adult, despite everything we've been through, the pain we've caused each other, I can rely on him to always be a helping hand for anything physical in mine and my family's lives. Although he couldn't provide me with the warm love and affection I desperately needed to grow, he did provide me with the knowledge I needed for creating a strong and solid foundation for my life. He is a physical manifestation of hard working, a man of resilience, sometimes to his own detriment. These I've been able to identify as the attributes that made him my childhood hero, and all of this as a whole is what I choose to take from my experience as his daughter. What I will say now, I want to make very clear, is a choice. If you decide to make the same choice to free yourself, viewing life from a new perspective is not going to be easy. The loudest voices from all around the globe are telling us that tradition is the right way, the only way. When we make a choice for our own well-being that is not traditional, that is not going with the flow, but fighting against the current of negative beliefs, it is like choosing to put a target on our own backs. This is what I do best. I was created to go against the grain, to fight against the currents of darkness and challenge everyone's beliefs. I flow with my own current that's neither right nor wrong. I know this now, and only now have I been capable of viewing it from a positive point of view. It would be so much easier to succumb to the constant pull from my bloodline's way of living life and dwell in the pain and sadness for the things I didn't receive and on the things that hurt me or took from me. I know I am strong enough to change those patterns. I view my life's experiences as brilliant planning. The family I was born into provided me with the knowledge I needed to build an unshakable, resilient foundation within me. The anger, loneliness, rejection, abandonment, lack of warmth, and love only added to my strength and ability to endure my life independently, relying on only myself to meet my own needs, to create my own security, to rely on my own strength and brilliance and see the truth of my worth. I did not accomplish this view alone, far from it, but it was my strength and relentless efforts to shift my perspective that I was alone in. It was my determination to unconditionally accept myself that I was alone in. It was my persistent, analytical, and curious mind that made it possible. This is what it truly means to be positive and forward thinking. This is what it truly means to be independent. Nothing toxic exists here. I spent years of my life raging and crying my way to healing these wounds. Those toxic energies have all been burned away in the fires of my anger. The ashes from those toxins have been washed away in my tears. And in the depths of my emotions, I forgot who I was. The only way to bring me back, to remember who I am, was to go outside in the dry, hot, barren desert and water my thirsty plants, soaking in the peace and presence that they continue to radiate, grounding me, reminding me how to return to my heart, making genuine efforts to change my negative thought patterns, forcing myself to find things that I am grateful for. This is what I mean by purifying yourself in the elements of Gaia. We have been given gifts from our childhood experiences. What we perceive as negative may be the very things that made us resilient little masterpieces, anomalies in the eyes of society. The trick is to make yourself see the truths. Viewing them as only negative, horrible, sad experiences takes away their positive attributes. They don't deserve that. Your child self doesn't deserve that. Let the mature adult aspect of you comfort your inner child and walk them through the beautiful garden that you have grown from the fertilizer that those experiences provided for you. Peace and love.